Imagine you were going to write a book that would be read by billions of people. What would be the first words you would write? I know what you're thinking. If you want to really hook the reader, you should start with some genealogy. That's going to really get people excited. Well, this is of course what Matthew does as he starts his book, which has been read by billions of people. When we read Matthew chapter 1, we often just skim the genealogy, but take a look at the names Matthew presents. We see some familiar people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. We know a little bit about them. We spent some time talking about David and Solomon and the United Kingdom. And here's Ahaz and Hezekiah from when we studied Isaiah. Why does Matthew begin with genealogy? Part of his purpose is to portray Jesus as the Jewish Messiah, and he does this in a couple of different ways. For example, his genealogy begins with Abraham. Matthew highlights the connection between Jesus and Abraham, who was the father of the Jewish nation. Another thing Matthew emphasizes in his genealogy is the number 14. He says that from Abraham to David was 14 generations, from David to the fall of Babylon was 14 generations, and from the fall of Babylon to Christ was 14 generations. Why the emphasis on 14? One reason seems to be gematria. Gematria puts a numerical value on each letter, so in English, A would equal 1, B would equal 2, and so forth. Matthew used gematria in the genealogy to convey a meaning. In Hebrew, the name David has a numerical value of 14. By the way, Matthew seems to be manipulating the genealogy to get these even sets of 14. His purpose isn't genealogical accuracy, he has a theological focus. In other words, by mentioning King David multiple times in the genealogy, and by highlighting the number 14, Matthew seems to be communicating to his first century readers that Jesus is the son of David. Why would his original readers care about this? If we were Jewish people living in the decades after Christ, we might remember that back in 2 Samuel chapter 7, the Lord said to David, "Thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever." So David's descendants were promised a permanent reign. If we were living under Roman dominion, we might wonder, what does this promise mean for me today? Matthew wants us to know that a descendant of David, Jesus, is reigning. This idea is important to Matthew. He uses the term son of David almost twice as often as all the other gospel authors combined. For example, only Matthew records that in the triumphal entry, as Christ enters Jerusalem on the Sunday before his crucifixion, the multitudes that went before and that followed cried, saying, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord." This was a way of the people proclaiming Christ as the rightful ruler, something that was threatening to some of the Jewish authorities. By calling Jesus the Son of David, Matthew refers to Christ's kingship. Remember that in ancient times, the king was seen as God's representative to the people. Matthew wants us to know that Jesus is God's true representative here on earth.